Good morning. Good morning, guys.
Hey,
What's
guys.
going on?
It's good to see you again this week.
Hey, good to see you guys. We've got a special guest this morning. I'm excited about this.
Yes.
Guest and author. Brad, why don't you do the introduction since this is a personal friend of yours and an acquaintance of ours?
Yeah.
You set this up.
Well, today we have a very special guest. His name is CJ Casciotta. Welcome, CJ.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. CJ and I have a very interesting background. We both live in Franklin, Tennessee, but we kind of ran into each other after many years of not seeing each other. The last time we saw each other was in Santa Monica, California. And CJ was helping us work on a marketing project we did for Disney. It was a feature film, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. And he, at that point, I think was a college student just finishing up or wrapping up. And
I was just starting. I was in between my freshman and sophomore year.
oh, okay.
I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, he looked mature, so I thought he was just like,
he was a man beyond his years.
he was like a super senior. Yeah. Cool. Well, welcome to our show. We're really glad to have you. You, man, every time I check out what you're doing, you're just blowing my mind.
Well, thanks. I mean, that and just to go back to that story, it's such a cool story because we were working with a lot of different people, and I was just trying to get into any sort of semblance of the industry as possible as a kid from New York, and went to to California and tried to figure this whole entertainment and media thing out. And you were really one of the only guys who kind of looked at me and said, I'm gonna pay attention to this kid. I'm gonna invest some time in this kid. So you taught me a couple things on Adobe Photoshop, and you said, really, I'm sure I was like annoying and peppering you with conversations of how do you do this and what's your career like, and you were really nice. And so it was cool to run into you. I think, gosh, maybe 15 years later in Franklin, Tennessee, and go, wait a minute, I know that guy.
Yeah, we know each other. Yeah. So
Brad, I can't believe you hired a kid from New York.
Well, normally I stay away from those.
Well, it depends on where in New York
from
he's
New York,
from,
but
right?
I'm from Detroit, so there's like Chicago, Detroit, New York.
CJ,
We gotta stick together.
Yeah, it's true. I'm from New York. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I was on Long Island.
Okay.
Yeah, how about you?
Island, in Queens. I was, on the other side of the.
All right, yeah, so you were legit New York, yeah.
We're in Long Island.
Yeah, we were in Nassau County in East Meadow.
Yeah. I have a lot of family.
So it literally was like, the show Everybody Loves Raymond, like that was totally our family.
Yes. I know it well. I grew up in the same type of family. So you're Italian?
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay.
Italian and Irish. So
okay, I'm Italian, German.
that was totally copacetic, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, now that we got that out of the way.
So today on this episode, CJ is started off as a college student, now is a renowned author, a thought leader.
Super renowned, guys.
Yes, and has a really cool platform that he's developed called Ringller, and I'd love to talk and share with the audience what he's doing because it's really cool, and I think it's going to be helpful today for our listeners for sure. There is a quote from your book that I wanted to lead. I think it's a quote from your book. If it's not from your book, maybe it's from some dream I had or something. But it says, "What if we lived as though we had something to give instead of living as though we had something to prove?" Is that a quote from your book?
No, that's definitely in there, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty profound quote. And it just makes you stop for a second and go, whoa, okay, what am I doing? But anyways, we'll get more into that a little bit more. Why don't you, can you tell me a little bit more about from when I met you in college to where you are now and that kind of journey, and I just would like, after talking with you 10 years ago, I you just meet people along the way, and I thought you were really cool, and we barely worked together or saw each other very much, but just for a little season, and then all of a sudden, I ask what you're doing all these cool things, and man, tell me a little bit about that journey.
Sure, yeah. So again, I was this, kind of scrappy college student trying to look for jobs in media and just to get my hands on anything that I could. And then what was really strange is right around that time, YouTube came out, Twitter came out, Facebook came out, and really the whole media landscape changed. So I kind of rode that wave a little bit as, somebody who was young and others thought to hire because apparently since I'm young and I'm in California and I do media, apparently I know how to do YouTube and social media and everything. And so I really rode that wave, even though I was learning along with everybody. And so that kind of started a career as a freelancer, sort of media producer. And what I really figured out along the way is I loved getting into people's message, their identity, what they cared about, what made their heart beat as a company, as an organization. And so I kind of shifted from, running people's Facebooks and Twitter and helping them get set up on YouTube to really going deeper and leaning into those conversations that I was already naturally having with clients about why do you want to do this in the first place? Like, what is your core message to your audience? And so kind of transitioned into a branding consultant. And now that's such a weird thing to say because branding was an elusive term before. It's a super elusive term now. Like anybody with an Instagram account has a personal brand, right? But what I have always meant by brand is, again, that core essential purpose that makes you unique, that makes you different, and really what makes you weird in a sea of same. And so got really excited about doing that. Learned about design thinking, started teaching design thinking and messaging, and started a podcast called Sounds Like a Movement, where we got to interview all of these really interesting people from all over the world who were using their unique message and platform to make a difference in people's lives. And then at some point, I kind of woke up and realized, man, I like doing this, but what's my core purpose? What's my unique sort of way of maybe contributing to the world? And I grew up loving Jim Henson and the Muppets and Mr. Rogers, and I realized I wasn't really leaning into that sort of own personal weirdness, if you will. And so decided, what if I started to do all of these things, teaching people what made them unique and how to express that, and how to make a positive sort of impact in their community. But I did that starting with kids. And so that was sort of the impetus for Ringbeller. What if we call Ringbeller, by the way, kind of a combination of TED Talks meets Sesame Street. So we've still been interviewing all of these fun, interesting weirdos from around the globe who are making a difference, but we're having them talk directly to kids. And we've got puppets, of course, who lead the way, and we've created these really fun video-centered lessons that we are putting into schools across the country. And we're about 1.5 years old. We are learning everything we can about. I mean, it's been such a crazy journey in just going from I've really put my marketing hat on. Trying to raise funding and trying to scale. So it's been. I feel like I'm getting my I tell people my poor man's MBA in the throughout this process.
That's the real one.
It's been really fun. Yeah.
Tell us a few guests that you've had on your videos for the Ringbeller.
Well, that's been a really surprising treat. So we've had people who apparently. When you ask people, hey, do you want to talk to kids about creativity and kindness? People have jumped at the opportunity. So some of my favorite guests have been Nicholas Smith, who is a former Disney Imagineer. If you've seen any of the really interesting illustrations out there that like the Obamas have reshared or anything, like especially with all of the need for activism, like they're usually his illustrations. Seth Godin, who as a marketing and advertising podcast I'm sure you guys love. Ira Glass, who is the Peabody Award-winning host of This American Life. And then because we're in Nashville, we've got to give props to Manit Chauhan, who's a Food Network judge on Chopped, but she's got a bunch of great restaurants here in Nashville. And so she was really great too. Awesome. And a bunch of other ones that have been amazing.
That's great. I would love to know, CJ, we talk a lot about here on the podcast, or we've had, we're really good. And we, all three of us, have a pretty extensive career in doing marketing and branding and messaging for clients. But the hardest thing is doing it for yourself. The joke, the cobbler's kids have no shoes.
Yeah.
And you kind of alluded to that there. What was your process for transitioning from doing this for other people to then saying, you know what, I got to find my own brand and my own voice and create something out of it. Was that process hard? Was it easy? Can you just kind of unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's always difficult, and I think I'm still iterating, and probably will always iterate what that looks like. I think what's been the hardest for me, and I think I've started to get better at it incrementally, is knowing when to invite people in and what to invite people in on, where my perspective can get overly myopic and sort of narrow, and knowing what only I can do and what nobody's going to be able to do for me, or with me, because it's only in my own, sort of personal DNA/IP. So really striking that balance, and learning to do that has been helpful.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. You have this theme, it seems like, and it's just this being weird is good kind of theme. And did that come from your own feeling about yourself, or just was it observation of the world? Like, tell me how that theme that seems to be prevalent in what you do, where you value the weird, and tell me how that started, why you think it's important, how you may think it's important even in a business.
Well, I mean, let's go back to, me and you, and me being in college and kind of having this education up until then that told you, I mean, from 5 to 18, that told you, hey, you need to take a standardized test. You need to answer the correct questions. You need to sort of fit within this assembly line, this framework. And then I get out to LA and I see you and all of these other people doing these incredibly different things and sort of carving your own path. And I had sort of this wake up call of like, oh, what we've learned as kids does not necessarily reflect the skills that we need to actually have a productive career and a life that sort of thrives in adulthood. We need to sort of lean into what makes us different, what makes us unique, what makes us weird. And so then when I started doing branding, it was like, oh my gosh, that's kind of the foundation for any sort of great brand, great company, knowing what makes them different and how they can sort of carve that unique path as well. So that was sort of the journey into really starting to value this idea of weirdness. Plus, I think on a personal level, like, I was a weird kid. Like I said, I loved, the Muppets. I loved, I love things that weren't sort of kind of your standard idea of what it meant to be, a kid growing up in New York. And so I think that's really the case for so many kids. And what's a shame, and one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about what we're doing with Ringbeller too, is what's a shame is that we live in a culture and a system that says, no, you have to be the same, you have to comply, you have to sort of, fit within the assembly line. And the great danger is that we are educating and sort of teaching kids and conditioning kids to really neglect the thing that will help our society move forward and innovate and be the environment that we all really long for and wish for.
That's good. So what I hear you saying is that what the impression that Brad left on your life was that weird works. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah. Well,
it's funny because it's very elevating of, I think, everyone, and it's that everyone at some time of their life, or maybe even through the majority of their life, feels different or weird. Even though we may not be as weird as we think we are from each other, we just have a sense that maybe we're the only one.
Sure.
And I think that can either be celebrated or it can be the opposite. And if it's the opposite when you grow up, that can be really hard as you get older and start to integrate into the world and participate, because I think it can actually stop a person from being who they would otherwise be. So I really love the message. It really, in everything that you've created, I'm like, oh man, this feels so refreshing.
CJ, would you say that you're taking the word unique, unique offering, uniqueness. That's what we always try to do with clients, is find out, okay, what's your unique selling proposition? What makes you different from other competitors? Are you taking the word unique and exchanging it for weird, or would you define them as different things? And if you would, I'd love to hear you kind of parse that a little bit more.
No, I think I'm using them synonymously, and weird is sort of the message, but it drills down to how you position a business, how you create a team culture, how it can kind of dive into all of these different segments. So I would say one of those segments for sure is talking about a brand's unique selling proposition or their unique position in the market. It really comes down to what makes them weird.
I just in thinking through that, I was sitting here thinking, like, what's the difference? Are they the same? Tell me if this rings true with you. I don't want to read into your book or what you talk about, but I would think that when I think of something unique, it's kind of at one level. But then when you start talking about weird, you're talking something about a little more vulnerable, a little more honest, a little more human. And I think that's what resonates with people, is finding, just because you're different or have a new angle at doing something is one thing, but then acknowledging the weirdness in it, that to me, that feels like it might go a little deeper. Am I reading that?
No,
right?
I think you're right. I think the word, and this is all sort of, getting into semiotics and semantics and everything, but it's like, unique sounds like it was strategized, right? Unique sounds like it comes from a boardroom. Weird sounds more inherent, and it sounds more excavated from what's inherently there.
Plus, it's fun. It's a fun word.
Seriously.
No, I mean, it's fun. It's accessible into business, to people, to kids.
And by the way, I think another litmus test for weirdness versus, just sort of your run-of-the-mill unique selling proposition is that your weirdness comes from your people. It comes from the humans that make up your organization, not sort of this, distant, sort of set-apart product. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not manufactured.
Yeah.
Yes, CJ. I know. By the way, I want to echo what Brad said. The stuff on Ringbeller is really, really cool. I love the Muppets thing too, and I think you said on your website, we make education fun, right? That's kind of right, which I think is really cool. So, I would love to know. Obviously, you started freelancing, right? Is that what you said? Like early on, just doing, like after you worked with Brad, or talk a little bit about like the transition and maybe to what is now. Maybe describe, what is your business model like? Do you have clients? Do you create? I know you have investors. Like, so what's the product? And maybe you can just break that down for us a little bit.
No, that's great. Yeah. So Ringbeller is currently building a V1 of an app that we've got our MVP out. That was last year. Did really great in schools. We learned a lot. Kids really love it. We found that it actually reaches demographics that we didn't even intend to, have them reach. So that was really cool. And now what we're trying to do is sort of build some more interactivity to these. Videos can sometimes be sort of static. And so what we're trying to do is build games. And we even have some really fun ideas for ways that we can sort of turn kids into the media creators versus us having to produce all of the content ourselves. It's more about, inspiring kids to interview their community leaders and those who are different and weird from them. And so that's what we're really working on now. And we're working on sort of filtering that through a school product primarily, but then also testing a consumer product for families, because we know now, especially post-pandemic, the role of teacher and parent are sort of blending and molding and meshing, and kids are at home. And so really it comes down, we think, to trust. It used to be you could hand your kid a app because it said, oh, this is educational and this is for kids. Now with all of the everything going on and data breaches and all that kind of stuff, it's really going to come down to what can you absolutely trust is going to benefit the social emotional well-being of your child. And we really want to step into that space for both teachers and parents as like the socially responsible kids app. And so that's what that's the vision. That's what we're moving towards. And we're really excited about it.
I love that. I have 3 little kids. I hear little kids in the background. Do you have little kids?
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, it's
No, that's good. That's
Just
good. How many?
Your test market.
Yeah.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, we've got a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so
cool.
I'm in that same range. We have oldest is 8, youngest is 3. And what you're saying totally resonates with me. It's like as soon as technology comes in, everything's a Trojan horse for stuff. It's like really hard to
Yeah.
to handle that. And also, it seems like the really good teaching stuff just doesn't get the attention, the funding, and the skills that it needs. So it's such an interesting space. I know for a fact, because I know all of us do. We've read all about it. Like that market is growing tremendously right now. Were you in Ringbeller before the whole coronavirus stay-at-home thing, or did that come out of it?
Yes. Yeah. And actually, in a weird, strange silver lining way, it sort of helped us a little bit. So that's been,
I would imagine, yeah.
Cool. But yeah, we've been in that space before all this worked. And another thing too about, we would kind of put the type of learning of Ringbeller under like soft skills or social emotional learning. And one of the things I think really, again, makes us weird, and what we're kind of betting the farm on is that we're not cute, in the sense of there's a lot of content out there that is very touchy-feely, which is great, and we need that. And so, but what we're kind of zagging where everybody else is zigging, is trying to take the archetype of sort of a 8th grade boy who might live in a under-resourced neighborhood and go, how do we create something that grabs his attention and makes him laugh and engages him, and then through that teach these really, really important life skills that he's going to need. And then obviously girls and everybody around him. But if we had to kind of pick who we really want to go after, and if we could just get him excited and laughing and into this, then we're going to be just fine.
That's the center of the target, right? If you get that, you think you get everything else.
Yeah.
How did you get the name Ringbeller?
Ringbeller comes from a Roald Dahl book called The BFG.
Oh, that's right.
Ringbeller means a really great dream that kids have. So
that's right.
Yeah.
As someone who also grew up on Mr. Rogers, I remember that he was, it's kind of funny, CJ, with all this Mr. Rogers films and movies and documentaries that have come out in the last couple of years, even the Tom Hanks version, which I loved. The nostalgia of it and the realization of how influential a person like him was in our lives, you kind of forget about it. But then all of it comes flooding back when you see stuff like that, and I don't know, Sesame Street or whatever. I've often said in the last few years, in the current climate, it's like who is our Mr. Rogers? Who is our person who kind of, we say, all right, there's a sense of a center, a North Star that we say, this is what we all agree on, and this is what kindness looks like, and this is what inclusion looks like, regardless of anything else. Mr. Rogers was very socially conscious too. Is that something that's important to you? And the reason I say it is not to go down a path, a rabbit trail, but really we talk a lot here about integrating purpose and goodness and kindness, and asking the why constantly about why we do what we do. I'd love to hear about why you do what you do. What's the why behind Ringbeller? Not the what or the how, but the why.
Yeah. Well, gosh, we could start talking about Mr. Rogers for a really long time. But I think that to answer your first question is we are that North Star. I don't think Mr. Rogers ever intended to have a successor. I think his entire career and purpose was about helping us be little versions of what he was teaching. And so I think that's really the only way that we can make a difference. And I know that I don't mean to sound Pollyanna-ish about that, but I really do think it's not going to take one sort of individual leader. It's up to a lot of little micro decisions and choices from each of us to live out that message. It's like, he taught us, and now we're adults now. And so we have to actually implement some of these really basic skills. And that is really the why behind Ringbeller. I mean, you read all of these books about purpose and vulnerability and authenticity, and you have all of these really brilliant marketing minds and scientific minds, and people in their 40s and 50s and 60s going, oh my gosh, I've never heard this before, this is amazing. People like Brené Brown and what Seth Godin has done to sort of humanize marketing. And what I really want to do is make books like mine, books like Seth's, book like Brené. I want to put us all out of business so that kids would read our book maybe in the last physical bookstore that's left on earth in 2050 or whatever, and they go, well, of course, I grew up watching Ringbeller videos. I grew up knowing that everybody is unique and weird, and that's actually an asset, not a deterrent. And so if we can make that kind of teaching almost irrelevant by the age of 2050, and that's really my why. That's what I'm going for. That it's so ingrained in us that we don't have to have this education anymore.
That's so good. I love that.
I got a question for you, but it's going to be polar opposite of where we are right now. So I don't know if we want to stay here, because I love this. Like, to Bob's point, I mean, I personally believe that business can change lives and should change lives. And I think that there are some businesses like yours that are explicitly in that space. But I think that some of the realization that would be awesome to happen and is happening is helping businesses. And I think through this conversation, helping businesses that don't think they have any deep reason for existence realize that they do, and use every influence that they have to help the world a little bit. So, man, this is near to my heart. I love this stuff. And I think we have a disproportionate ability to influence the world for better. That being said, I would love to know, like, CJ, you're an amazing content creator, and not like YouTube creator, not that that's bad or anything, but like, you create all kinds of really great content. I mean, with really great intentions. You've got strategy behind it. We talk a lot here about kind of the state of the service agency industry, and how, again, I think Bob mentioned it, like, sometimes they traditionally create really great content for their clients, but they struggle to like really develop a brand for themselves. And I don't know if you would agree with that or not. That's just my take on it. But it seems like that's a struggle for people in agencies, running agencies in that service world where they're serving other people, but they're almost like maybe they feel generic. Like, how do they find their soul? How do they start creating, let's say, content at the end of the day, media, their own stuff that has a meaning and a purpose? Like, how do they find that? Any advice for them?
Yeah. I think in my own sort of experience, creating my own content has always led, and it might be sometimes in a really roundabout way, but it's always led to clients and to more work. And so it's that thing that what I would say is just advice it's the one area where you don't have the restrictions of a client, looking in and going, well, can you do it this way? Can you do it that way? Just spend a certain amount of time, justify it by going, hey, look, this is marketing for my marketing company. This might seem like playing, this might seem like, unabashed creativity. That's actually a really good thing. I've dealt with a lot of sort of personal shame and going like, oh, why should I take this time and write this book, or take this time and make these, videos with a bunch of puppets? It's like, no, that's actually helping me be a better service provider when I do sit down with a client and they ask me, okay, go be creative, go be strategic. And so I would absolutely say do something that is unhindered, but have the sort of work ethic around it that you would have if you were trying to serve a client. And 9 times out of 10, again, it might be, you might not be able to draw a straight line to it, but when you put that stuff out there, it excites people and they go, oh, can you do that for us? And then you get to kind of go to them, yes, we can, but here's how I made this. I had some creative control over it. I didn't kind of go the route that I would normally go if working with a client. And then if you can sort of educate the client through that process, I think you might even have a really great working experience.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of sort of cyclical.
By the way, it's also a different process, which actually makes you stand out. I've experienced the same shame that you're talking about in creating our own content and books and other things. You know, it feels like you're like having too much fun, you know,
Yeah.
when other
What
people
is that?
are
Yeah,
not.
I know.
And it's like, but I think that is, if you feel that, I think that's indicative of a real problem just throughout. Like, if you can't feel like you're like, you know, you're doing valuable work and having fun or doing it for your own business. I was convicted by that, you know, that feeling, but I felt it, you know,
Yeah.
and so I think that, yeah,
I
Thank you.
would even argue that when you allow yourself to do that, that's the only way you're going to find your why. And you're only going to, the only place you're going to lean into your why, because what you do, in my life, that shame, you cut off a part of yourself, which is your deep creativity. And from your deep creativity comes, I think, your purpose and your,
I actually believe, and I believe that like finding your purpose is something that you have to be intentional about exploring. And it's kind of like a never ending thing.
Yes.
I feel like that's part of our role on earth as we live, is to be pursuing that. And
it might change.
And yeah, it might change. It does change. It evolves. And some people are born and they know their purpose. Like, that's rare. I think for most people, like, you find it over time, but you're finding it because you're going after it.
Mm-hmm.
And not going after it, and, you know, just kind of, you know, which I feel like has happened to a lot of our society. Not going after it at all, I think, is just complete, like, in a lot of ways, wasting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the opportunity that you have on this planet.
You know, CJ, I like to see your point on how business owners or people who run businesses or like C-suite people, how can they value more of employees or people that are in their organization, the weirdness of their organization, and how do you communicate that one thing about your business to your employees so that they understand what the big picture is and what you're really there to do and what's the ethos of the company?
Yes. Wow. That's a big question, and something I've thought a lot about. So, you know, any culture has their majorities and their minorities in the way that they think. So obviously, if you have a super creative driven organization, you know, I worked with the retail brand once where it's like, you know, they were super creative. They were for like you know, Southern California surfer skater kids, and so you had, you know, all of these amazing product people, and their finance department were just like, they would always sort of, you know, butt heads, and that's actually a really good thing. I think it's really important for the C-suite to sort of know their culture, and realize that in order to kind of safeguard against that culture going off the rails and being unproductive and unprofitable, they need to have a cultural minority sort of checking their balances, so that they need to have a certain amount of weirdness and encourage a certain amount of weirdness. And then it's also really important for the weirdos in that culture to realize, hey, I am there for this reason, but I'm also in an organization that value, like, essentially when an organization knows what their culture is, hands down, it makes everything a lot easier. So if you are somebody who is in the cultural minority, you go, okay, I am here to push back to a degree, but I know that I have chosen a role in an organization that values X versus Y. And so at the end of the day, I shouldn't be surprised, and I shouldn't be frustrated, and I shouldn't be disenfranchised when they choose X over Y. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think that the companies who have leaders who are come off as a little weird, like Elon Musk, are better? Well, I mean, seriously, like Steve Jobs, right? He's a little weird.
Yeah.
And did things a little differently. Do you think that those companies, especially like the ones that are in innovation and pushing boundaries, do you think those kind of leaders actually do the company better service of getting people to think out of the box?
Well, I think they are in pretty privileged sort of unicorn positions. Like most companies don't have a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk, running the show, and all of the sort of, puzzle pieces that made those icons into those icons. I think there are a lot of organizations filled with people from, the bottom to the top of the infrastructure who default to turning their heads to what the competition is doing and going, well, if we just did it like that, then we would be X amount more successful. And what I'm saying is that if there was a push from the C-level to allow everybody a little bit of creativity, a little bit of that Elon Musk sort of attitude, a little bit of that Steve Jobs attitude to go, you know what? We have to carve our own path. We have to zig where everybody's zagging. I think you would get to the results you're actually looking for a whole lot faster, because you're not just trying to keep up with the market. You're trying to create your own sort of path in the market. And in some ways, there's a lot more risk to that, obviously, right? There's a ton of risk to weirdness. There's a ton of vulnerability to weirdness. But if we if we allocate a certain amount of time and resources to that risk, I think a good business should have that. I think you don't get to be in the space of a Tesla or an Apple unless you go, okay, we are going to literally set aside a certain amount of our business model, of our resources, to weirdness, to risk. It's why a lot of people don't choose it, but it's what differentiates sort of good to great.
Well, I got I think this might be a quote in your book. I'm not sure if that it's a response that someone had, but knowing what makes you weird is the best thing you can offer your art, your business, your friends, your family, and yourself. It's the essence of creativity. It's the stuff of movements and the hope of humanity. That's big, but it's true, right? Yeah. Wow. This has been our weirdest conversation yet, just so you know. But I love it. I love it. I love the theme that you have. I think it's so inspiring, and it's so simple. And it's like, yes, it grounds you back to that we're all different, and let's celebrate that. For sure.
Yeah. Thank you, CJ, for joining us. I know you got to run to a call, so we're going to let you go. And I think we might continue to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, Brad, thanks for bringing on cousin CJ.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I feel like he's a long lost family member from all my Thanksgivings.
Exactly. So tell us where they can get your book, where you can actually experience the Ringbeller program.
Sure. Well, and really quick, Ken, before I go, I just found out there's a company that will ship New York bagels overnight. And
yeah, I found that one. My mom's, I'm no joke, my mom's on a plane right now bringing bagels.
Oh man, I'll be right over.
She does that every Friday.
I'll drop some at your house.
So you guys can go to getweirdbook.com to pick up the book, and ringbeller.com to check out Ringbeller.
Awesome. Well, thanks. You have an awesome day, and keep making great content.
Yeah, you guys too. This was a really fun conversation.
Awesome. Thanks,
Talk to you soon.
We'll see you soon.
Wow, what did you guys think of CJ? It was a great conversation.
I love CJ, man. He's my cousin CJ.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have him back another episode. We have so much. You could unpack a lot more than we did, but I thought that the conversation it's
so fresh.
It is fresh. It's really fresh, and I think it's something that we as marketers have to really look at. Like, he's really thinking differently, and in some ways that kind of get me to kind of like recheck things. So.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm sitting here going, I've got to be reminded of this regularly, because, that whole shame-based marketing, that whole shame-based feeling that we all struggle with, it's a daily battle, I think, because, you've got so many voices coming in of like, okay, this is how you do YouTube videos, and this is how you motivate your clients to click, and this is how you get conversions. And many times it's so diametrically opposed to what CJ is talking about, don't you think?
Honestly, I think, I just wrote about this and we did a video on this. I think marketing is contributing. I mean, it's statistic. You can look this up, but it's contributing to the lack of mental health of the population so much. And I think, I was writing it in the context of like, we're going into Q4 and we our audience is e-commerce brands. And so trying to say, hey, look, like there's a better way to do this and you don't have to make it, people don't have to be standing in line on Thanksgiving to get your product. But I think all that to say is I do think marketers have, this disproportionate pull on people, and I don't even think they realize it.
That's right.
Like when you're running ads and like shame-based marketing or super urgent marketing or whatever, like these things are contributing or to the betterment or the lesserment, if that's a word, of people's mental health. And so I think that marketers should realize that weight, and I think companies should realize that weight, to what I said earlier in the thing to CJ. But I think it's so cool. I love the I love the finding your uniqueness part of it, your weirdness, and
really leaning into it, not being afraid of it.
That's the best business strategy. We've talked about that. Again, but in my opinion, I think I've defined it as finding purpose, but I think finding purpose is the best business strategy. Yeah. It's the only one that people can't rip off. And in a world where we're all just like you said, it's how, okay, I want to do this. How does everybody else do this? Okay, let's do that. Like that's
yeah. But the thing is it's so counterintuitive to the way that we function, because what CJ is saying and what we the fresh approach that we're sitting here talking about is like, celebrate the weirdness, use it. That's what's going to make you. But meantime, we get pushed back into a world that says like, put the filters on, get rid of the lines,
because we're scared.
We're scared. Like, don't come across as weird.
And I do think that there's a responsibility. Like, being weird doesn't give you the carte blanche. You can't not be kind or like hurt people, and either on either side of like wherever you stand, right? And so there's probably a little bit of both of that, but at the end of the day, I do think like as a society, we're scared of being different. And I think companies are especially when they have shareholders, they're like really scared of being different, because what if it doesn't work? And that produces this cycle that just perpetuates into this place of just generic organizations. I feel like there's a movement coming out of that though now.
Yeah, I think there is.
And I think what CJ is talking about is not just.
I would argue that TikTok is a direct pushback on that, because on Instagram it's about managing your image. On Facebook it's about airing and managing your opinions, and on TikTok it's about just being you and just having fun. It's like there's no like managing your image or whatever. It's like dance if you want to, ride a skateboard, run into a wall, dress up however you want. It's just like quick. Hey, here's my weirdness, and isn't it funny? And isn't it? Let's celebrate it. I don't know. That's just my kind of like sociological observation.
It's interesting because we started off the podcast with a quote. What if we lived as though we had something to give? Instead of living as though we have something to prove. And if you direct that to today's marketing, we do that so much. We're always trying to, even our unique value props always like, well, what's the uniqueness that we have something to prove? We're better than the others, and we're better. One of the things that I noticed during COVID is a lot of big brands started doing some very empathetic commercials. In fact, they didn't talk about their cars at all. They talked about the human spirit, and we can get over this, and we're with you. And actually I saw ads from like, I think it was Cadillac that did that. And I was just like, wow, that feels so refreshing. And I'm like, that's really how you build a brand. If that's true for them, if that's true, that's how you build a brand, not just showing me the next cool thing that your car does.
The challenge, and it is a real challenge, and it's because of marketing and where it's gotten to, is even when you're genuine, people don't believe you.
Mm.
You know, a lot. It's harder to the wall has gotten thicker because for good reason. People are protecting themselves. They're sort of jaded by, you know, these fake genuine kind of marketing and companies. And so the challenge is being genuine is not even enough. You got to be genuine. And then you've got to convince people that you're actually genuine.
Yeah, well, you have to actually show that you are. You have to do things that you are as an organization.
And it takes time, and that's why you have to be committed to it. You know, because it's not easy. It takes time, and people are going to say, that's not for real. You don't really care about me. And then you have to keep going and
it has to be a part of your ethos as a business. If you look at Tom's Shoes, would you ever think that Tom's Shoes isn't sincere when they started out? I don't know if they are now. I don't think that. I mean, I think of them as a sincere brand, but they started out with a foundation of being sincere, and they proved it. You know, where a Cadillac, you don't know if they're sincere. They're like, okay, well, you know, it's a nice message, but I don't really know if that brand is sincere or not. And so I think that's the key, is that as a brand, can you bring that out of your organization, and can you communicate that? And what are you doing to prove that?
I think that one trick that at least I've used is it's hard to manufacture that, right? So like, it's sort of like, in my opinion, you know, whoever the founder is, or whoever, if it's a really big organization that's been around for a while, doesn't have a founder, that's even harder. But whatever the pedigree was, whoever owns the soul, like the purpose of the company has to come out of what they believe their purpose is.
Yes.
And that may not, I mean, so then the cards fall where they are, right? Because, you know, who knows what that purpose is? Who knows if people care about it? Who knows if whatever? But that's not for us to judge. But I think that I think you have to go to that, and it's got to be like whatever that is. Like you just have to, as a company, adopt and try and win on that front, because it's genuine, and it's really hard to like install a purpose in something that isn't really there at the heart.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's challenging because as you grow as a business, and if you become a public company, weirdness doesn't Wall Street doesn't like weirdness.
Wall Street does not like weirdness.
That's the same thing with Elon Musk and the stock prices. Like as soon as Elon goes out and tweets something or says something,
it likes it in the long haul.
In the long haul, as long as you're proving the financial model works. But the weirdness is what makes Wall Street a little finicky about a company, and stockholders. They want to make sure they can trust the person who's leading it. But at the same time, it's the weirdness that makes the unique products. It's the weirdness that is making the money in the end, and you can't have one without the other sometimes. And so, you know, we just I think every 10 years we go through a cycle where I've seen this in my lifetime from the 80s until now. People actually value weird more now than they did 10, 15 years ago. And it's exciting to see what the next 10 years holds, to see if we can continue that, because I think there's such a value in that. And and I think there's a sense that you can be free and you don't have to follow the model, and you don't have to always adapt your own personality based on somebody or your business. And
I also believe that that allowing for that, and, you know, celebrating, you know, God made us all different, and we have different qualities, and we have different purposes and different reasons why we exist. Using those and allowing that to happen, I actually believe over time will stop sometimes it gets so squashed that there is extreme pushbacks or extreme weirdness that is an overcompensation for that, or weirdness that may not be the right word, but it creates like a pent up pressure. And so as we position those things and we allow for them to come out, I actually think that it brings more people together, because I believe that the extremes actually come out of, like, you know, maybe suppression. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think the vulnerability aspect of what CJ, it's like you've got to get past it, whether you're in a business or a solopreneur or you're with partners. You got to get past. You got to have a sense of self-awareness to say, I am weird, and this is what's really weird about me. And I'm going to lean into that, because I know for me and for so many people that I know, you fight against that all your life, and you try to hide that, or you try to learn coping mechanisms to say, how can I be a better entrepreneur? And that's great. Those are all great tools that we can use. But at some point you got to say, what's the unique me? And am I free to lean into that and share that with the world? Because like you said, we're surrounded with so many voices just kind of doing things the same way. I know you've done some funny videos and content about this. It's if you're this is how you scale up with your e-commerce. And if you get my $19.99 book for $50 a month after that, then I'll show you how to do it.
That was a good one. I did that almost too well. You should go anyone that's listening, go on YouTube and find it. We're taking Growth Hacker, but you're right. Like, I think there's this, but you know what, when we started doing those videos, we took the approach of, hey, we want to educate people and entertain them a little bit and help that to kind of be the hook that sinks in, the pattern disruption. But we're in an industry that that typically doesn't love, like most people would, most other people are talking heads. And so people tell me, like, you can't do that. You got to put on a collared shirt. You got to stand in front of a camera. You have to say, this is how you do e-commerce. The buy button has to be red, and whatever. That's the stupidest e-commerce example ever. But that's not me.
There's a formula that you must follow.
There's a formula you must follow, and people will reject it if you don't follow that. And the thing is, that's not me. That's the problem. And it's not our company. And so whoever you are, you got to do you. You just got to do it. You shouldn't be I think the way you do it is important. It shouldn't be do you, and do it so that you hurt people and insult people. I think do you and become a better and better you every day.
Yeah, that's what the takeaway that I had one of our interviews with Calvin. What a great example of that. And he just said, I came to the point where I was just going to be me, and I named my company Come On Media, and that's because I'm always saying come on. And he
do that well.
He's comfortable with himself, and that is very attractive. It's very fresh, refreshing, and I think that's just a universal thing. Is when we find and lean into who we really are, even if it's different, and people cock their head and they're like, "What is that?" It's attractive. It's what makes us all unique and different. So
that's good.
Do you think you have to do it without a chip on your shoulder, if possible? I've been there, and that I think that ends up doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And so you have to do it because, I love that quote. I'm going to write that down on my wall from his book. But it said, "What if we lived with something to give rather than something to prove?
Mm-hmm. What if we had something to give instead of living as though we had something to prove?"
I mean, that's exactly that's what I just said. I feel like that encompasses it way better. But it's live, do you, but not because you're angry.
Right.
Do you because it's the unique thing you have to give to this world.
Yes. Do it. I mean, sounds cheesy, but do it with an attitude of love versus rebellion or I'm going to stick it to you, but kindness and love. So
that's good.
It's been good, guys. Great discussion. And, I'm going to go out and reread CJ's book. I bought it a few years ago because it's been out a few years, right?
Yeah, it has.
The Weird book. So
get it. You can get it. Get Weird. Get it on his website. I think you can buy it. I mean, anywhere books are sold, pretty much. Amazon, obviously. And
good. Well, guys, let's practice being weird today.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right.
Done.
All right. Till next time.
Bye.
See ya.